Anyway, joining us to talk about the loss of public trust in America, we have Mark Meckler. He is a political pundit, attorney, and business executive president of Citizens for Self-Governments and Convention of States Action. Mark Meckler, happy having the show. How are you today?
I'm doing good. Great to be with you.
Yep, glad to have you. So what do you make of public trust? Is it recoverable or is it dead?
Well, I think it's not only recoverable, but growing on the Republican side. The problem is that we have one party in this country, the Democrat Party, that is promoting not only distrust, but hatred of the United States of America. And if you look at the numbers behind the poll, that's what you see, that Republicans still love their country. They're as patriotic as ever. Actually, patriotism is up a bit. But if you look at Democrats, they have been taught over the last 30 years just to hate the United States of America. And that's a significant problem.
Yeah, and we've seen also just attacks on institutions growing, like physical attacks. Attacks on ICE agents have increased 700% since around this time last year. Because, like, the poll, and, you know, it's an interesting contrast. You have the poll on patriotism, where at this time last year, 62% of Democrats were proud of the country. Now it's 36%. And as that dropped, attack on ICE agents has grown.
Yeah, and one of the interesting things about that is you'll see a swing in people who are confident in our government when the parties change hands. And you'll see that Republicans are less confident if Democrats are in charge, et cetera. And I would expect that. What you don't normally see, and what's so distressing about this, is the lack of patriotism, the lack of love of country. And Democrats swing back and forth on that depending on who's in office. And you're right, they're attacking institutions. They're not just attacking ICE agents. Let's remember the protests outside Supreme Court justices' homes, the attempt on the life of one of the justices. We've seen attacks on police stations all across the country during the BLM riots. So this coming from the left is a genuine, true hatred of the United States of America, and it's being taught to young people inside our educational institutions.
And we've seen the outcomes of that. And like our government itself, I mean, the bureaucracy and all that, it's drawn from these institutions that are educating these people to be in such a way where they hate the country unless basically they're in charge.
Yeah, I think that's correct. So, you know, they say democracy is in danger. What they mean by that is we're losing, and that's what you hear from the left. They never say democracy is in danger if they win an election. They always say it if they lose an election. This has nothing to do with even ideology. It has to do with power. If the Democrats are in power, they're happy with the country. It doesn't really matter what's happening, and vice versa.
Yeah, and with Republicans in contrast, though, we saw only 7% or so who seemed to feel that way. It was a 7% increase from 85% who were super proud to be American last year versus 92% who are proud to be American this year. And since that only went up 7% after winning the election versus Democrats losing 26% after losing the election, it really shows the value contrast.
Yeah, I mean, what it shows you is that for Republicans, I think we have a deeper understanding of what it means to be American. Our love of country is tied to the idea and the ideals of America, to the Declaration of Independence, to the Constitution, the idea that this is a country where there's opportunity for everybody. And we believe that that opportunity exists in a bipartisan basis, whether we have a Democrat administration or a Republican. We may not like the Democrat administration, but it doesn't make us love our country anyways.
So how do we bring these citizens back who just seem to think that you should only be proud of the country if you are the one controlling it, otherwise just hate it, hate yourself, and all that?
Well, I think we have to realize that we're fighting a deeply rooted ideological battle that finds its beginnings in our educational institutions, and we're going to have to take back those institutions. One of the things that I'm proudest of the Trump administration for what they're doing right now is fighting back against these woke institutions, removing the racism from these institutions, using the threat of withdrawing federal funding. But it's going to have to go much deeper than this. If we don't gut these institutions and restore them to some form of neutrality, or frankly even making them institutions that promote the love of America, then we're going to continuously lose the Democrats on this.
Yeah, not only that, but it's like, it's not just love of America these institutions are fighting, it's their own voting blocks. Traditionally, Jewish Americans, for example, 60% plus vote Democrat, yet you have Health and Human Services Office for Civil Rights finding that Harvard University violated federal civil rights laws by failing to protect its Jewish students.
Yeah, and we're going to find that case is going to spread its way across, especially the elite institutions in America. It's not just Harvard; it's a lot. I heard UPenn has failed to respond to a similar inquiry, so I think that's going to be coming. And a lot of other universities are going to fall under that magnifying glass. And if they don't fix it, they're going to lose that federal funding. And frankly, I'm not happy that they're federally funded anyway. But we definitely have a sickness inside those institutions. Some of it, by the way, comes from overseas. It comes from funding from China, funding from Qatar, and other places that hate the West. And I think we need to ban all of that foreign funding of our universities.
Yeah, not only that, but the universities themselves, why do they need this funding? They're sitting on vast amounts of wealth. Like Harvard, for example, has, $1 billion endowment that they're not doing anything with except watching it grow in the stock market?
Yeah, I don't see any reason why the federal government should be funding that. They're still charging tuition to students when they're sitting on over $1 billion. I think it's outrageous, and I think this is a broken model that we're going to have to work on a fix.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and because this model also contributes to the radicalization of Americans because there's no accountability, and the universities get to keep pocketing money, whether it's from the federal government, whether it's from the overseas actors. They just get to keep pocketing money. Doesn't matter what they do. Maybe they can make a token firing or something. I think years ago Harvard did something like that, but nothing will change.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at recently, Harvard ended up firing their president. I think it was Claudine Gay, and it made no difference. I mean, she was just replaced with another radical leftist. I think one of the things that we have to note is where this ideology comes from. It does come from overseas, but it's also internal. Again, this is going to be a long-term ideological fight. This is not something that we're going to solve in 1 year or even during the Trump administration. It happened over a long period of time. This is the Marxist long march through the institutions, so they call it. They've planned this for literally decades. It started in the 1960s, and it's going to take us at least a decade to root this stuff out, I think.
And meanwhile, we watch as society rots from the top down because it's the leaders of society, the politicians, the lawyers, the bureaucrats in the government, and they are and the millionaires, billionaires, etc., who are educated at these places that suddenly come out hating the United States. I mean, look at the 2024 election. More than half of the billionaires in the country supported Kamala Harris. It wasn't even close. It was like 80 billionaires for her to 50 billionaires for Trump.
Yeah, I think you make a really important point that we should emphasize, which is that these schools pump out the de facto leaders of tomorrow. When kids graduate from Harvard, they have a network made up of all the most powerful families in the country, and they're going to go on to be the leaders, the powerful lawyers, the business leaders, the governmental leaders. And so if they have a bias against the United States of America, it's going to be an outsized and magnified bias.
And on top of that, the areas that they float around with their influence because of the nepotism and stuff involved, it's almost and the elitism too. It's impossible for anyone lower than them in their minds to even get a foothold in there. I mean, you want to talk about a lack of meritocracy, you want to talk about oppression and wealth gap and all that. The elitism that these people at the top have, claiming to be leftists, is mind-boggling.
It is, and it's inconsistent with the ideology, which is not surprising because the hypocritical nature of the left is well known. But a great example right now is Zohan Mondami, that looks like he might be the mayor of New York here shortly. He claims to be a socialist. I would argue he's much beyond that. He's actually professes communist ideology, like taking over the means of production, et cetera, government-owned grocery stores. This is a guy that was raised in a wealthy family. His dad is a professor at Columbia. His mom is a leftist film director, so they are a wealthy family living high on the hog and then attacking the system that gave them their wealth. Because
they don't want anyone else to reach that height. Mark Meckler, appreciate you being on the Al Nathan Show to talk about this.